Well, welcome to all of our guests and panelists. I will kick things off. I'm Bill Fagan, CEO of the Aspire Group, and I'd like to set the table for today's conversation, but first, spend a couple minutes introducing each of our panelists. So, welcome to Sarah Baumgartner, who serves as the Deputy Athletic Director at Rutgers University. Sarah has served as the Deputy AD since 2016 and has oversight of all revenue generation and external departments, in addition to development and student athlete services at Rutgers. She's a sport administrator for both Rutgers women's basketball and softball programs, and Sarah previously held the position of Senior Associate AD, Chief Development Officer, after joining Rutgers in 2013. She has spearheaded the department's R Fund, the development arm, and launched the Our Big Ten Build campaign, which surpassed $100 million. Sarah is the most recent past president of the National Association of Athletic Development Directors, better known as NAD, and she serves on the Women's Leaders in College Sports Board of Directors. And prior to her time at Rutgers, Sarah worked at the University of Missouri for 7 years and is a graduate of the University of Illinois, where she was a 4-year letter winner on the softball team. Next up, welcome to Jason Butikofer. Jason is the Chief Operating Officer at the University of Washington. Jason joined the Huskies in April of this year in the middle of the pandemic. At Washington, Jason provides strategic direction for day-to-day operations of the athletic department and is the sport administrator for both football and men's basketball. But perhaps the most interesting role that Jason plays during these COVID times is he also oversees wellness, medical services, and strength and conditioning. Prior to Washington, Jason spent 3 years as Deputy AD at Purdue, and before that, served as the Director of Athletics at Southern Utah University from 2015 to 2017. Jason moved to Southern Utah from Army West Point, where he was the Associate AD from 2011 to 2015, and also spent 7 years at Arizona State University and 3 more at the University of Minnesota. Jason's a graduate of the University of Iowa, where he served as the men's basketball manager, and last year was recognized on Sports Business Journal's list of power players, leaders behind the scenes in college sports. Next up, welcome to Haven Fields, Deputy Director of Athletics at Ball State. Haven oversees external operations and assists in supervising 19 teams and over 400 student athletes. Previously, Haven spent 5 years at the University of Illinois, where he quickly rose the ranks within the athletic department and development team, and he co-solicited the largest gift in Illinois athletics history, $20 million for the Henry Dale and Betty Smith Football Center. Prior to that, Haven spent 5 years at the University of South Alabama as Assistant AD for Administration and Major Gifts, and helped facilitate the startup D1 Football Bowl subdivision program. Haven began his career at Auburn University, where he cut his teeth in athletic development, and prior to that, he played collegiate football at Auburn, where he earned Auburn's Defensive Player of the Year before going on to play a couple of seasons of pro ball in the Canadian Football League. And finally, welcome to Ben Broussard, Executive Director of the Wolfpack Club at NC State. Like Jason, Ben changed jobs and moved across the country during the middle of the pandemic this summer. Ben moved from the University of Colorado, where he was the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Advancement, Senior Associate AD, and Executive Director of the Buff Club. Within his first 2 years at CU, he and the team secured 5 of the largest gifts in Colorado athletics history. And prior to CU, Ben was the VP of Development at LSU. Ben climbed the ranks at LSU thanks to phenomenal record-setting success in fundraising. He's actually a 2-time graduate of LSU, and as a student was a member of the school's rugby club. Ben has served on NAD's executive committee since 2015 and was most recently named NAD's president. So Ben, thanks for joining us, especially on a game week for football at NC State. So everyone, thank you for joining us in this discussion. If you are interested in asking a question, there should be a chat feature. We welcome you to type your questions in there, and we'll get to as many as we can, but we've had several questions actually submitted in advance, so we'll start with those. But to set the framework, college athletics is under tremendous pressure due to the effects of COVID-19. And meanwhile, at our core in athletics, our responsibility hasn't changed, and that is to fund student-athlete scholarships and educate those students. And so my first question I'd love to hear from each person, starting with Sarah, is how has your athletic department adapted its engagement with supporters and donors during the pandemic?
I don't know if adapted is probably more about technology. So I think that the biggest thing that, our fundraisers are doing and our sales reps too, to be honest, is just constant conversation, right? There's so many unknowns. And I think we really cut our teeth and build fantastic relationships in these moments of crisis or challenge. And so I think for whether it's our development staff, it's our sales reps, that probably had to dig in even more than we normally would in terms of stewardship, engagement, and communication, and a lot of the unknowns, which is kind of what we're all dealing with. But I think owning that and going through it with your donors or your ticket holders is the best you can do and the best relationships you can build. So I think adapting it's all virtual, which I'll let some of the other folks share what other technology they're using to communicate with our donors. But we're doing a lot of these boxes and a lot of these Zoom calls and WebExes to communicate and talk. And there's nothing like the face-to-face. There's nothing that can ever replace that. But this is certainly taking a good second place to it right now.
Jason, how about at Washington?
Yeah, great question. I think, to be honest, we've on our end, we've collaborated a lot throughout the external areas of the department. We've taken a lot of cues from the development side with our strategic communications group to really see kind of what the pulse of our donor base is. I know we all get the D1 ticker and we see, a lot of conversations, and even when you look back at some of those, in an uncertain environment, being measured in how we're approaching our public facing communications and making sure they're aligned with, some of the questions that we're getting on the development side or in the ticket office has been critical. Not talking when we don't need to talk, especially, in an ever-changing environment. And then, consistently trying to get better in the same regards of providing our external relations group that is front of line to have the talking points and the most up-to-date data, or up-to-date information from the Pac-12 or the NCAA so that they're armed with the right information and are able to intelligently answer questions. And when things change every day, that's been a challenge. But really trying to focus in on that. So a lot of it's come down to strategic communications, but I think at the same time, and I know we have a number, Heath Bennett's on the call here too. We've had a really good approach to keeping our folks engaged with our donors. And, part of our strategy was, we assumed that we may be ramping up to a point in time, which I think we'll probably talk about a little bit later, where we're going to have to ask people to donate their ticket money or, maintain their seat-related gift as a donation. So really took a strategic approach on the front end of that. I think, like a 6 or 7 week approach to really starting to talk to as many people as possible, and make them feel loved and make them feel engaged so that when that ask came, which is going to come via, an email scenario, that that most or potentially wasn't the first time that they were hearing from us, in the recent future directly. So those phone calls, I think, were really, really valuable and important. And we can kind of talk about how maybe some of that led to some success in the first part of our campaign.
Love it.
And the silence, communication, silence can be deafening, right? And so communication more important now than ever. Haven, I know that's a hot button for you. How about at Ball State?
Yeah, so what you've heard from obviously from Jason and Sarah, strength in numbers, right? We've been extremely collaborative across the board with all of our external teams, just in having discussions with donors. I think early on, as we realized things were starting to take place, like everybody, we've got donors that we're assigned to, people that we're connected to. We started, heavy communication early on, lots of texts, lots of phone calls. And I think it was really important for us to create an environment not only to where we were having discussions about where we are as a department and where people might be as it pertains to contributions or solicitations for that matter, but also us just being sure that they understand we're here for the personal support of what everyone's going through at that time. So it was an approach on our end to be as collaborative as we could, but also at the end of the day, make sure people knew from our end that we're here to listen. There's going to be a lot of scenarios, and we want to be able to give you that in real time when we can, what's taking place within our department, the expectations that we have for you as supporters of our program. And not only that, but just to make sure that you all understand that we're here for you as people who have continued to invest in this program for years. We've got a lot of donors of age, so lots of different ways that we've had to communicate with people, whether that be via text, again, communications along the lines of just phone calls, whether it be an email or anything else. So just, again, strength in numbers, I speak to the collaborative approach that we've had, and it's ongoing as we speak, as the 6th and 7th hour, a 7th month continues to approach. So I would just speak to that from a collaborative perspective as well.
And Bill, before you go to Ben, just as I'm going to throw this curveball at Ben, because I think part of the struggle with our development officers as you do this collaboration, which I think everybody's points are so well taken, you have these events, momentum where you have a game, you see a donor or you see a ticket holder and it's like had a great win, had a loss, have something to talk about. And you have 6 months where there's like literally no events. And so Ben, why don't you enlighten us on how you keep all of your donor conversations so entertaining and lively?
I appreciate that, Sarah. A couple things. I'm coming to you live from my pickup truck in a J. Alexander's parking lot because we had a meeting with our athletic director that could be an answer to problems that we're dealing with. And so I couldn't get that off the books. I couldn't move that up. So that's why I'm here. Second thing I'll say is, doesn't Haven have a way with words? Donors of age. We have a lot of donors of age. Haven, I've never used that term. I've never heard it used that way. So well done, champ. But I'll say this: the things that we've done that I think are very beneficial and helpful aren't much different than what everyone said. But I do think it sort of reset how we view a donor, a patron, a customer. For years and years and years, we've gone so far looking for that next huge gift, that next major gift, that we sort of isolated and segregated the donors from the ticket holders, right? So that $100 ticket holder wasn't getting near as much contact and developing a real relationship that we would hope to have with our patrons. But now, because of the collaboration with our ticket sales team and our marketing team and our events team, when we're making all those phone calls, we've got the time on our hands to spend time with every single person, starting from the top and going down. And so I think that's how we're going to get better as an organization and as an industry, is that now we're going to find ways, maybe it's Zoom, maybe it's text, like Haven said, to spend some time with that, $300 30-year ticket holder, where otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And to that end, I think we're going to be better as an organization. The other thing that I've tried to find ways to do is there's certain people out there that are dying to see a face, right? They're dying to see you in person, so we've gone so far as to invite people over and just take a walk around the football field, right? Just so that we could be together, but be properly distant and not break any rules. We've had, walks in parks. When we started having real coffee meetings about a month ago, where we sat 6 feet across the table from someone, we had some of the best conversations we've had, because our donors, who we've never spent any time with, at that lower level, have said, hey, I want to be a part of the solution. How can I help you? So we've had some really engaging conversations in troubling times, but I think some things are going to shift in our industry, starting with how we communicate with our masses.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate your adaptability. And
You bet.
you brought up a point, and I'd love to get Sarah's perspective on this in terms of engaging with not just the major donors, but also our maybe those season ticket accounts that don't have that relationship in the R Fund. And so, Sarah, the Ticket to Success campaign that you're in the middle of now, tell us about that, and how do the different staff support that campaign and communication?
And I think it just illuminates kind of what Haven, Jason, and Ben talked about, this new way of thinking about how we collaborate. So it's put the hat on everybody that we're all fundraisers. We all sell tickets. We all are in this together. So yeah, I mean, the Tickets to Success is the same model that everyone, I think, has gone through, right? It's given donors the option to keep their money with us, make a gift, to roll it over, or to get a refund. And obviously trying to push a lot of our people to keep their money with us. But I would say this, because I know there's a lot of ticket folks in this call. I thought one of the most awesome questions that I think Dan Kaiserman's on too. We have an awesome group with Aspire and a great team of sales reps. But it's like when you transition the conversation from selling a ticket to a donation, what should we be aware of, right? What are the talking points? And like the most, like, I think powerful moment was when you're like, you've done the hard work, right? You have the relationships, whether it's a donor who's given $100 or somebody's given 10,000 or $1 million. You've done the work. The lift is done. Now it's a matter of making the ask, which you've done. You buy tickets, you buy parking pass. And so kind of taking away that stigmatism of like, it's really hard to fundraise, and letting everybody feel like they own that process and they can do it with confidence has been such a game changer for us. And I think that's what we're seeing. So we just passed the $1 million threshold of donations to our program, which is good. It's really, really good. And I think there's more work to be done, but it's more than just the dollars. It's more than that. It's about teaching everybody in our department that they're all fundraisers. They're all revenue generators. They all wear the hat of moving our needle forward and driving revenue.
Thank you, Sarah, and congratulations on the success in this time. And Jason, I credit you as being an innovator in this respect, in that, this whole concept of everyone's a fundraiser, and you've had that approach for arguably your whole career. And you tell us, how in that respect, how you view the annual fund, and how the staff views that as it relates to supporting the mission.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned earlier when you were going through my background. I spent time at Arizona State and really started the industry in the ticket office, and was director of ticket operations at Arizona State when I was much younger than I am, about 20 years ago now. I saw the value and I think I was ultimately moved to development at Arizona State because I saw the development of building relationships and building equity with people that maybe didn't have the connections at the time in the Sun Angel Foundation, which is now the Sun Devil Club. And I think the light really turned on to me early, based on my ticket office experience, that there's so much value in building up that equity. As you mentioned, especially kind of in earnest during my time at West Point with the help of Aspire, we really went to what I would say is and this is probably a terminology that's frowned upon, but a sales-based annual fund approach, and really leaving no stone unturned and trying to, work down, have all of your donors assigned. So really, it's a major gift approach, but with your annual fund, officers, as well as the Aspire group helped us significantly in that regard, with covering down on donor relationships and management. And I mean, it's amazing what can happen when you build equity with those donors that normally aren't getting the major gift type attention. And, it's different than the major gift work. I mean, it's more of a, 30, 40 phone calls a day, to stay engaged. I mean, we had at Army and at Purdue, I think we have, we had annual fund and Aspire folks that are managing like 500 donors, 400, 500, 600 donors. So it's different, the process, the protocol, but really it is, covering the broad range. I struggled early in my career with the thought of just sending a brochure, and I mean, what motivation does somebody have to go from 2,500 to 5,000 or from $250 to 500 if you haven't helped them through the year, you haven't built a relationship with them through the year? When they get that, it's, to me, it just seemed like a miss. And, also I've been at universities where you use student callers, as campaigns, and I'm not talking about in the athletic department, or even when I first got to West Point, they were like outsourcing, a lot of their annual fund calls across the university to some place I think it was like in Reno, Nevada. Like, those people don't know shit about West Point. So, how are they going to build relationships and speak to the institution, even if it's a student caller, like, it's a one-time call, right? Like, and then that student goes to class 3 hours later, and if that person needs something, who do they call? So I struggled with all that, like, early in my career, and had the blessing and support. And I know Ben's on the call. Boo Corrigan was my boss at West Point and fully bought into the concept. And it was, I think we started at 2.6 million annually at West Point. I think today they're north of, and maybe I know there's some people from West Point on the call, I think, but I think they're north of like 7.5 or 8 million now annually.
8.3, Jason.
What's that?
I believe it's 8.3.
8.3. So 2.6 to 8.3 is pretty good ROI. So, Boo's leadership and our ability to invest in growing, it was really a scalable model too. We started with 2 individuals. Tim House was one of them, who's now leading the development shop at Purdue, and a couple other people. We started with 2, and I promised Boo that if we return 6x on their salaries, let me keep hiring people until we start to see a decrease in ROI. And that was also a play on the Aspire side, scaling, how that group worked with our donors, was kind of the play. So I know it's scaled up to the point now where it's at 8.3 million, and they have a massive annual fund staff, and same success at Purdue. I know there's some Purdue people on the phone, but the growth there, I think we had a record annual fund year with 4 months of it. They had a record annual fund year there with 4 months of it being during the pandemic. So again, it's just kind of structure, strategy, and approach. And there's no doubt that in both of those stops, the Aspire group was critical to our ability to leave no stone unturned and to grow those numbers exponentially.
No, thank you for that, Jason. And it's amazing to see hear the numbers from Zoe today. Ben, you kind of kicked off this theme of kind of everybody in together and the whole spirit at NC State around the PAC, right? So you've launched the Preserve the PAC campaign. Curious about what the response has been, and obviously leading into game week now, although it's announced that there won't be any fans in the stands and no tailgating. What are your plans in terms of engagement with Wolfpack Nation on game day and around the weekend?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's good to hear, the connection between Army and Washington and Penn State, and Purdue, and then back here at NC State. Boo's doing a great job here, and he's one heck of a leader that's inspiring a lot of good things here. From our standpoint, we're doing everything we can to continue to engage our people, right? We need to use this as an opportunity, not as a problem. And so we're doing a few little things that we think are easy. We're delivering tailgate packages to a lot of our best donors that are here locally, using it as an opportunity to get in front of some of the people that really gave back to our Preserve the PAC campaign. I was looking at some of the numbers, and, in our Preserve the PAC campaign, Garrett Monroe, who has, Army ties, played a big part in this. I think we've got about 70% of our people who have reinvested with us. That's a breakdown of either donated it straight back to us or, reinvested it as a combined gift and a ticket credit moving forward next year. And so that's a big success for us. From our standpoint, it's really important that we continue to be front and center with our donors and our ticket holders. So our staff is going to go and, get to a restaurant that's got capacity enough to allow us to be together and be with our donors. We've got some of our donors that are setting up their tailgate groups, which is a big deal here at NC State, throughout the state, and they're going to get together, and we're going to try to pop in and drop off things to them so that we can stay engaged with them. As the world works, we just had our Day of Giving, which was modeled after everything that they're doing at Purdue at NC State yesterday, and that went really well for Preserve the PAC. So the passion at NC State, it exists, and I think it's our job to continue to show them opportunity where their philanthropy, their investment in ticket purchases, their scholarships, changes lives, right? That's really what people want. They want to know how their dollars are going to impact lives. Anytime you have the ability to connect them with what their dollar, what their $1 million, what that's doing for a human being, right? That's all they really want to know. And we're dealing with a lot of social unrest these days. And so to show them how they're going to leave Raleigh in 4 years with a better lot in life and a better opportunity, that's what we need to continue to focus on, is showing them the ROI, not just, how it's keeping the department going, but how it's changing lives. And that's what we should do a great job of these days.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Ben. Haven, Ball State, pre-pandemic, in 2019, the university approved the $15 million practice facility for football with construction beginning just this summer. Congratulations, first of all.
Thanks.
What's the significance of that project, and how's it going when we've been thrown this massive curveball?
Yeah, appreciate you asking that question, Bill. It's been a long time coming. Prior to my start over a year ago, lots of history, overall with the project, lots of conversations, lots of dialogue. Again, I think the leadership we have now, our athletic director, I'm biased, she's a rock star, and Beth Getz, along with our president, who's a servant leader, and Jeffrey Mearns, have done a fantastic job of enhancing or escalating where we are right now with the overall project itself. We've had, I think it's unbelievable support from donors, understanding the need for the facility. 90,000 square feet, 80 feet high. These buildings are massive. As you realize, they're being constructed. They're massive. Ratio Design and Messer Construction have been great partners to work with. One of the things we realized early on is obviously the only school in the MAC without one. We needed to move forward. And this facility is obviously multi-purpose in the sense that it's not only for football, but baseball, softball, women's soccer will also have access to it. And again, from the recruiting perspective, it's the most important. We take away the no. When student athletes come to our campus and they realize that we're moving forward with a facility that we have not had, I think it just bridges the gap on where we are as we move forward as a university, as an athletic department, and just, our student athletes, coaches, our programs understanding that we're headed in a direction that means we're forward thinking and that we want to be as competitive as possible. And this is obviously a very important piece for us right now. And as far as the timing of it, which I'm really excited about, we're 6 or 8 months away. We're supposed to be complete by April of 2021. Cross your fingers. Things are continuing to move forward. We were concerned throughout the pandemic. We didn't know if this might slow things down. It did not. Again, our project managers have been fantastic, moving things along, and the people who have supported, we're continuing to think forward on how we can get them engaged and over to see where things are. I think I continue to ask those guys when we're going to have more beams, more steel in the ground, just things going upward. A lot of foundation being built at this time, but projects moving along great. Really excited about it. So.
Thanks, Haven. I've been following the live feed on YouTube. Lots of dirt moving around. We've got a question in the chat. I'm gonna make this a jump ball for any of our panelists. The question is from Paul DeLillo, and it's around messaging points to those season ticket accounts, particularly those that have premium seat fees as a donation. And what are the messaging points that you are putting out there to those accounts that we're asking them to keep their donation because we need it now more than ever because of COVID-19 related expenses that have been forced upon us? How are you getting that message out there that we really do need it now?
I can jump in there with just one point, and then I'll let the others. I think the main thing that we've been leading with and that we've talked a lot about internally is a lot of these benefactors have invested for years. These people that are sitting in premium seats, a lot of them, 10, 15 years of significant major gift or premium seat type investments. And, we've built this, like here at Washington, we've built the brand, we've built this thing up to a point of national prominence. And there's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in the department, and there's been a lot of equity that's been invested outside. And to take a step back, we're at a moment in time where we need to continue. We're gonna take a small step back here because I think the landscape of our business is changing. But it's an opportunity to continue to differentiate ourselves, from our peers and from others nationally, in continuing to invest in a time so that we take as minimal of a step back as possible and potentially come out of this thing in a better spot than others, and the investment now is more important than ever in that regard. And really just trying to lead from the front with that messaging. And obviously our communications group and ticketing group and others have done an amazing job of building out additional talking points. But to me, that's what it's all about. And I think probably the most impactful thing that I've read in the industry was something that Barry Alvarez put out at the University of Wisconsin. And I was already thinking in that regard, and then when I saw what Barry wrote and how he positioned, his approach to the student athletes, to his, about his student athletes and, investing in them, investing in the program and how far they've come, it really resonated with me, and it made us really have a much deeper and broader conversation internally So I think sometimes learning from your peers, as many are trying to do on this call right now, but just reading that and knowing Barry from my time in the Big Ten, it just struck me as like, hell yes, this is what we need to be telling people, So.
Hey, Bill, I'll jump in and I'll add a little bit to that. Many times when you're sitting back and you're taking a look at the people that are sitting in those best seats and that are making that kind of investment, a lot of times that's people you already have great relationships with because they've been major gift prospects. And if they're not, they need to be, right? And so those are the exact kind of people that, that a message of investing back into our student athletes rings true with. And so I think that that any messaging you do at that point in time, needs to have some of the touches on it of the faces, like the names, the faces of the people who they're going to directly impact. And then, as soon as you get someone to bite on something like that, if they allow you to do it, promote the hell out of it. I mean, let them know that, they made a difference and let their peers know that they made a difference by stepping up. Use them as an example of what it looks like to be philanthropic and making a difference. That's what we did, and the results were pretty good. I mean, it could have probably been a little bit better. But from that standpoint, I think if you can, show them that they're making a difference, put a face to it, and then thank the hell out of them so that they can, tell their friends how happy they were with what they did.
Thank you, Ben. Sarah, I'm going to put a twist on this to keep the conversation going. It's been reported by one of the ADs in the Big Ten related to return to play for football that it could be upwards of $1 million in new expense. And considering that reality, I'm curious, as it relates to testimonials and messaging, how do you utilize testimonials from either student athletes and or donors to help amplify your message at Rutgers?
I think it's so critical. I think Ben just touched on it, but I think it's the best way to get across what impact they can have on the student athletes' lives, on the program they love. I think, Jason, you made such a good point about Barry, and I know what you're talking about, but I had a donor kind of have a similar message about, because I actually shared what Barry sent and said, hey, we have something similar we're looking to send. And it was a great conversation. It's one of our, he's given us millions of dollars. So, to ask him to convert, $10,000 over to a donation, that wasn't it. It was bigger about the message. And it's exactly what Barry said. Like, there's been so much investment to a point, right? We've gotten to this place of excellence. So where do we go from here, right? We can take a huge step backwards, or you've got to keep doubling down now to invest. And the donor was like, just don't forget to talk about my experience, right? Like, I am absolutely all about making our student athletes experience great. I'm going to invest in their weight room, which is what he named, right? I'm going to invest in X facility. I'm going to give a scholarship. He's like, but don't forget the value of what my experience has been, right? I love coming to games. I love the social experience. I love my time as a student coming to games. And he's like, so just make sure you don't miss on that talking point and what that investment means to keep that experience being as good as we want it to be, if not better. And I thought that was one thing that we haven't probably talked about enough. And we'll kind of bring that into our messaging as we go forward, like, sharing the tailgate experiences, like because Big Ten is playing football. I know your question, Bill, as of 2 days ago, was that we're not playing football, but we are playing football. So, how do we kind of virally on our different platforms make sure that we engage and get that social connection, which is actually just as powerful, I think, as making an impact on student athletes' lives. There's a lot of our people, right? A lot of our people buy tickets, don't even know that they're giving to impact a student athlete's life. They're like, I want entertainment, right? I got money. I made money. I want to go see a game, see football. I want to see my friends, have a cold beer and go to a game, right? That's all about entertainment to them. So we've got to speak into that experience. And so I think part of our challenge over the next 6 weeks getting ready for our first Big Ten game is how do we continue to have that social connection and make that value happen for our season ticket holders and donors.
I love it. And you're speaking from having been a student athlete, and I want to turn to Haven as well, who, as you reflect back on your time as a student athlete, how has that shaped the way that you now engage with both students and your audience?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. There's an advantage to it. I was just having a conversation with Sarah the other day, through all these times, these interesting times that we go through, as a former student athlete, you find ways to adapt to all the challenges, just to be sure that you're serving all those that you work with at the highest level possible to provide the most impactful experience imaginable. How do you make sure that you're encouraging, you're energetic, you're bringing life to people, you're bringing a different you're bringing a different attitude to the office every day. I think, given the time that we're in right now as leaders, the expectation is that we will be able to, be as optimistic as possible for those that we're working with. And so I think having the experience as a former student athlete, having so many things happen when you go through a lot of adversity, how do you, and again, I'm not a pandemic in this case, but just how do you take that and apply that to this case as a professional? How do you make sure that as a leader, you're making sure people understand what's expected, but at the end of the day, again, holding them accountable, encouraging them, being compassionate, all those things. So I think there's a lot of pieces to it, Bill, but I just point to the fact that we have the chance to adapt to every situation. And I think how we pour in other people around us is important because we're influential in that sense. So I would say that would be the thing that I would probably point to the most. And just overall, when I think about my experience as a student athlete, and then having a chance to work in college athletics for the last almost 16 years, there's no better way to pay it forward right now in particular for what we're dealing with and what we're going through, creating as many experiences as we can. We work with these young people on a daily basis, and the thing that excites me the most, not just about our industry, but about them, is the fact that they're so resilient. With everything going on around them, they still continue to find a way to be excited about the experiences that we're trying to provide for them. So again, finding ways to adapt, and being sure that we're following through with that, the experiences that we're providing, holding people accountable, being the leaders that we be. And just, again, I think the optimism and the energy is always important in cases like this. So
Your passion and enthusiasm and focus on serving is contagious, Haven. Thank you for that. Ben, you've having recently been through a move and obviously spending a significant portion of your time in SEC country, your perspective, I think, would be welcomed as it relates to what are the differences between, as you look at your peers that are ready to kick off the football season and how they are engaging, and many of them allowing fans in the stands compared to maybe where you are now or where you were at Colorado.
Yeah, two things I'll say about that. First thing I'll say, and I'm laughing a little bit as I'm sitting here in this parking lot, I just watched the guy who we had lunch with leave the parking lot in a Bentley. I didn't know that was his wheelhouse, so that's good to see. So it's, that question that you just asked me when I was at Colorado working with Marcus Pallas and all those guys over out that way, they would ask me that question a bunch, right? Like, Ben, what's the biggest difference between Boulder, Colorado, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana? And I would always kind of temper my response because, I would say other than everything, right? And what I meant by that is, it's two completely different fan bases, right? In Baton Rouge, you grow up with it. It's in your system. Most people from the state stay there. They don't leave. Colorado's a lot of people that have recently moved there or coming there from out of state. So it's a different passion. They're both equally passionate. It's just growing up with it is different. Over here in Raleigh, right, it's a bunch of people in the state of North Carolina that just are ate up by it. They love the Wolfpack and they want to do everything they can to be a part of it. It's interesting what Sarah said a minute ago, and I think it's a really good point, that the experience on game day is so important in Raleigh because it's when people from different counties, the 100 different counties in North Carolina, get to see their classmates and their friends, and they get to watch their kids grow up. And those are the things that that we tend to overlook, right? The importance of game day. There's a young lady on our staff, right, that every time we go to put together a graphic that's going to be sent out to the donor base, we immediately go to like an action football shot or an action basketball shot. And she's quick to point out, hey guys, you're missing the point, right? You send that and that ends up on the desk of a mother or, a 65, 70-year-old man who's been coming to the games for 50 years. That doesn't draw on emotions like a 5-year-old girl in a cheerleading outfit and a young boy screaming at the field, right? So a lot of times we have to curb the messaging and get it more towards family. I'd say there's a ton more similarities between the schools that I've worked at than differences. A lot of people that really, really care about the institution. They care about their family, their colleagues that they get to spend time with. And so I think the messaging that we need to carry forward isn't so much how are we different, I think the theme is, how are we similar, right? I mean, in this time where we're dealing with so much unrest in society about all of our differences, the one thing that's similar amongst all of us is we're passionate, right? We care. We as administrators care, but our fan base cares. The reason why they pick up the phone, right, going back to Jason's point earlier, right, the reason why Jason is so successful at what he does is because he makes sure his people pick up the phone and have an honest conversation with the person. And, you know, it's that old analogy that I talk about sometimes. You know, how many times have you been at a bar and the best looking person at the bar came up to you and gave you their phone number and said, please call me, right? That probably happens to Sarah all the time in her life. But for the rest of us, right, we're going to struggle with that, right? We need to get on the phone, you know, and tell people, you know, why they need to support us, right? And why they should do more with us. And a lot of that has to do with family, right? With friends, with whatever they believe in. And so that's where we need to make the touch points. I think we're all a lot more similar than we are different in that way.
I just want to go on the record and say that happens to me all the time too.
I was thinking of when you were talking about people screaming behind the benches. All I could see is Jason, and I think there's some videos out there of him in action as the most passionate fan at some basketball games. But
there's some interesting gifts out there for sure. There's some people at Purdue that I got to make sure I stay on the right side of, because there's a treasure trove of weird behavior, weird and excitable behavior that they have on record there. So,
most interesting man in college athletics, right there. On a more serious note, Ben talked about social unrest, and I've got a private question here that was shared with me during this time, and I want to pose it to our panelists, which is, we'd love to hear best practices with donor communication, as there's heightened awareness around social injustice, specifically for those who may have a different view of some of the statements our teams and student athletes have shared. What do those candid conversations look like with your own local audiences?
I guess I'll take a stab at this one to start. I think, again, there's with so much going on within our country, to Ben's point, we've got to be, as I said a couple of weeks ago, you've got to be really comfortable having uncomfortable conversations, but being respectful of everyone's opinion, and just understanding that we all come from different backgrounds. We all see things differently. We may all see things differently, but we've got to be respectful of each other's opinion, while also understanding that I think we all have something in common we're trying to get accomplished. I wish there was more unification than there was separation right now, just because people are so frustrated, confused, angry. But I think we're trying to find a common denominator in these discussions, and what matters when you're having it with a donor where there may be a difference of opinion, on different topics. But I think, you just got to own it. I think you have to continue to be, honest with them honest with you, and just who you are. But I think at the end of the day, what matters most is that you all are willing to have that dialogue. And I think some of those, it may depend on the relationships. Some of those conversations go a lot deeper. There could be more dialogue along the line than there might, than for some that you might not know as well. So that's just where I'll start. I'm sure there's other thoughts on this topic, but I just know for me, having conversations with those that might look like me and those who may not, I'm just going in with the thought that it's very important for us to understand that we're trying to get something accomplished for a university, for our student athletes, but I think at the top of that, we've just got to really be comfortable having these discussions and understand that let's just be respectful of each other's opinions.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that, Haven so beautifully said. I think it's important to know where your organization stands, and I say organization in terms of if you're on a development staff, if it's your leadership in the athletic department, and not necessarily that you've got to have the same political views or the same social views, but I do think it's important to understand kind of as you have a conversation, because we're in so many positions where we're having personal conversations, we're having professional conversations, we're talking money. I mean, these things are all really vulnerable things to talk about. And, I'll give you an example. We had our men's basketball team. They did a peaceful protest down the shore right after George Floyd's death. And, you know, we have a couple men's basketball players who are so well-spoken, they're so intelligent, they're so thoughtful, but they're passionate, right? And they're in pain and they're hurting. And they are using social media as their platform, right? They're young men finding their voice and they're using it. And it's not been, I would never say it's been egregious. It's not been disrespectful. It's just been their truth. And it reflects and aligns 100% with where our RED's at, aligns with where the president of the university is at. I'm not saying it's going to happen all the time, but for me as someone who's in development and may see someone and have a donor say, I think we need Gio to keep playing basketball, right? And I don't think he needs to do, well, here's what I would say is like, you know, he has a voice. We respect that voice. And you're not going to come to an agreement, right? And I think, Hayden, what you said is like just being comfortable with the fact that for all of us who love people, like people who like us, who want to make people happy, who want to make people give to us, like being okay in that moment to be like, we're going to just let this conversation stop here, right? And pivot and move on to a different conversation because you will not agree at some points, and it's okay. Like it's okay. I have a hard time with it because I don't. It's not comfortable for me. But I definitely don't agree with. I didn't agree with him. I think Gio is a fabulous young man who should use his voice, and he's finding it, right? So, I just think, Haven, you said it perfectly. It's being uncomfortable, being comfortable with the extremely uncomfortable, and being open to having conversations, and not being scared to, you know, have a personal belief, and making sure that it aligns professionally for you as well in those tough conversations. Hope that helps. That made sense.
Yeah, thank you both for your vulnerability and sharing. I think, you know, it's a reminder that our fan bases, our donor audiences are a reflection of our country, right? So they're just as diverse, and the viewpoints are not going to be unified at all times. And so understanding, you know, your organization's position and also supporting appropriately is key in these times. I want to switch gears and look at, you know, this kind of remote Zoom world we've lived in. And curious, this is another jump ball question in terms of innovation. What are the best innovations or maybe virtual fundraising initiatives that you've seen, either you've implemented or maybe you've seen and you aspire to consider implementing in the near future?
I can jump in quick. It's pretty easy. We ripped the Band-Aid off and we went to mobile ticketing. And the only reason we could do it without having thought through it endlessly to the point of like no decision was COVID, right? It's safety, it's flexibility when you don't know your season, it's ability to change tickets on the fly. So for us, we went all mobile. We'll be all mobile from here on out for forever. And so I think it gave our whole entire ticketing team and sales team to put together a great plan, which they'd had for like a year and a half, present it. We got it approved and we move forward without really too much thought, which typically we get really bogged down in how many people it's going to offend versus just what's the best decision. When the whole world is like on Amazon, but we still like paper tickets. It's hard, right? Sometimes we're a little behind the times in athletics. So for us, that was a huge step, and we haven't gotten to use it yet because we haven't had fans and stands, but I'm really excited for what this means for us and our customers and kind of this new mobile world and getting our athletic department there and our customers there from our side.
Thanks, Sarah.
For you, Bill, just from a virtual perspective, one of the things that's been exciting is this thank you platform that we've started to use and how we would communicate with our donors, basically, or even prospects for that matter, being able to share a message where it's more of a video with some talking points or some points of emphasis, I should say, that speaks to uniqueness of a program, whether it be from a coach or having student athletes be able to speak to there's a specific message for that program, focusing on the operational need or whatever it might be at that time. And what we found is not just within athletics, but with the foundation, the university, as we move forward, this is that it's had a 70% open rate. So we know that people are actually viewing the video. They're actually taking the time to potentially follow up with us. There's some kind of dialogue being had, a response from them, or at least a question being asked. So that's been pretty unique for us. And just to brag on our the brain trust is what I call them between our marketing and ticket offices. We're approaching this thought around a social sellout. I think we've got one of the bright minds in marketing in Sean Sullivan, who does a fantastic job in how we sell, over 22,000 tickets obviously all the proceeds going to our student athletes, creating a virtual return around homecoming. We're not playing football right now, as everybody knows. I think we all would hope that would change. But I thought it was a fantastic idea where we create a virtual game ticket, create some potential virtual reunions, do some social sellout T-shirt opportunities, and tied to some kind of Cardinal mystery pack. So those guys have been really being creative around the fact that we're not playing football, but how do we use the fall to connect with donors and prospects or people who just may have an interest in getting engaged with us in particular in this community. So really excited about that one. But yeah, just a couple that I wanted to share.
Love it. Sean, get your phone ready because it's going to be ringing soon to learn more about that. Ben?
First thing I was going to say is, Haven, you're going to need to send that to me because I like it.
Me too.
Second thing I was going to say is that, I love both of those ideas for the masses. For more a direct, like higher end donor way of using Zoom. I've seen some colleagues that have done this, and I think it's a great idea. One that we're going to borrow is giving them a seat in some of their favorite team meetings and practices. Right. I mean, if you're having team meetings by Zoom anyway, right, and you've got a coach that's not going to say anything that you're going to be worried about, giving your, 1, 2, maybe your 10 best donors to the women's softball program or the women's hoops program or the football team, giving them basically the back row, right, and letting them have a seat and see what practice looks like remotely. Costs you nothing. It engages your best people in an amazing way. And again, if you have faith that your coach won't embarrass you, which we all should, then, it's a really effective way to engage your best people on the top end. And so I'd say that you should explore it if you're not doing it now.
Love it. Jason, I'm going to come to you with a reported $16 million bill to fund the support scholarships for 650 Washington student athletes across the 22 sports. How has the first month of the Huskies All-In campaign gone? And if you could speak to the phases of the campaign that are going to help you continue to fund all of those programs.
Can you hear me okay? I think I'm having some technical difficulty here. Am I good?
You're good.
Okay. I mean, we, as I mentioned before, we had a ramp up, kind of anticipating that phase 1 of our Huskies All-In campaign would be tied to tickets and seat-related donations and our ability to transition ticket money to donations or maintain our seat-related gifts as tax-deductible donations. So it's went really well. I mean, I applaud our group. It was an extremely well thought out phase 1 of the campaign. There were obviously a lot of creative elements to it. There were a lot of strategic communications elements to it. It was really positioning our ticket office staff and sales staff and retention staff to best serve our constituents. It was outbound calls to our season ticket holders, specifically premium season ticket holders, and then a back-end campaign that our sales team launched that called people that made a choice to ask for a refund or asked for a credit. We're in the process of going through that now and calling those people and asking them to reconsider or to change their pathway on those decisions. And I think we're north of like $225,000 in transitioning that money through those additional back-end efforts. So really trying to personalize it when we're dealing with 10,000 people, but trying to find ways to make it personal, really thread the needle on the right communication. We're projecting to end up that phase 1 of the campaign north of $12 million. So I think we're like at 10.5 right now, and a little bit high. We should easily probably surpass 12, 12.1, 12.2 is my guess. So really proud of our group and the effort and energy and strategic thought process that went into that. Phase 2 now becomes more philanthropy, straight philanthropy, leadership gifts, major gift asks. Our goal there is north of 20 million. We've already had some good traction, including a $6.5 million gift that does not include, that won't be included in the 20 million, but that was out of the gate. So that was a big step in the right direction. But as a part of their phase 2 campaign, phase 2 of the campaign is really what I talked about before, is no stone unturned. Heath Bennett and myself are working really hard right now to analyze data and who manages what donors, and really trying to move to more of that sales, using this as an opportunity here at Washington. Again, I'm on month 5. In normal circumstances, we would have already probably fully implemented, the strategy, structure, and approach that I previously mentioned. So using this as an opportunity to shotgun it based on the current human capital that we have, and really just trying to figure out how to best attack current donors through a really measured management process. Also, really taking a hard look at high value, live bunts and side bunts, and having those be front of our targets as well. So I think it's an opportunity for us to pivot quickly here and really take that sales-based approach to what we're doing. I saw one of the questions in the chat was related to ticket sales folks, and what I'll mention with phase 2 of our campaign on the annual fund side is our ticket sales folks are going to be transitioning quickly to fundraising, and it's an unbelievable experience. They're going to have to get trained up. I mean, I think Sarah mentioned, or somebody mentioned, a lot of it's you've done the work, right? You've built the equity, you've teed it up, and the next step is really the transition into a fundraising mode. So unbelievable opportunity for these ticket sales folks to get some additional experience. I know, in the most part, from my experience at West Point and at Purdue, we were transitioning people from Aspire to the development shop, or either Aspire ticket sales to Aspire development, and then to the Army development shop, and the same thing at Purdue. And there's it seemed like there was a progression, associated with that. And some people were more interested in selling tickets as opposed to raising money. But from a professional growth standpoint and broadening, your skill sets, it seemed to be pathway that people chose. So this is like a quick, immediate way to get in that pathway, and an exciting opportunity to impact the department. So that's really the annual fund piece of phase 2 for us.
Yeah, and I'll just add, Bill, to Jason, because I think he's making so many great points. But for Rutgers as well, our Aspire team has just been incredible. I'll give a lot of kudos to Dan for his leadership, to Joe Raffinelli and Ryan Gottlieb for their leadership. But we will be transitioning. We kind of took this ticket to success as our first step. We've had, I think, an upsells from where a donor decided to be, from where the sales rep took them. We've probably almost gotten $250,000 in new dollars that we probably wouldn't have gotten had we not had people on the phones, using their relationships, using the equity, as Jason says. So this for us is a fantastic launching pad to what Aspire and what our ticket sales team can do for us on the annual fund side going forward.
I love it. And we're gonna ask one last question to the group around what you see for the future of the next 12 months. But just anecdotally, to hitchhike on those last couple of thoughts, we did a nationwide survey to season ticket holders and donors, and got responses from over 5,000 fans, and asked them, what are your intentions given the 3 options of refund, credit to next year, or convert to a donation? About half of them said they would like the credit. About 25% would consider a donation. They would like a credit, about 20% donation, about 10%, 15% wanted a refund. However, what we found is, following the survey, when then you had the personal touch of a human being calling those same accounts, we saw an increase in the donations and in the credits and fewer refunds because of that personal connectivity and the storytelling. And so I think it's no longer just an email communication, but it's digital with the personal and all hands on deck, because resources and staff sizes may not look in the future like they have in the past. So that leads into my final question, which is, what are your predictions for college athletics for the next year, Ben?
Listen, I'll say this, that a lot of great things come out of change, right? And we know things are changing right now. I think that the last hour we've spent together, we've seen that there's a lot of really great ideas and innovations that we can put forth moving forward. I don't think it'll look the same, but I do think it'll get closer to what we look at as normal. but with some changes, right? I think we'll always look at someone who sneezes in a big crowd a little bit differently now, right? But moving forward, I think the thing that's going to come out of this is we're going to take a look at a ticket holder, a donor, and they're all going to be in a very similar bucket. And we're going to make sure we do a better job of connecting and contacting with our people.
Sarah?
I mean, very similar. I was actually hoping that like Jason or Haven or Ben were gonna have this like great answer, like the magic wand of like, here's where we're going to be in 12 months. Cause I know it's been wild, but I think our enterprise in general, I mean, we're under a lot of pressure right now as college athletics, but I think we're gonna be smarter, more flexible. And we're just getting better because of it. So I don't have a lot of prediction of the future. I just know that this is a time we either get better or you go backwards. And I know that we're a competitive group in general in athletics. So we will only get better. And I look forward to that with a lot more collaboration across our units.
Jason?
Yeah, I mean, my initial prediction here is that how we come out of this in the near term is going to be heavily put on the backs of those people on this call, and the effort, energy, and strategy that your group uses through this complex, ever-changing time. I told our major gift officers yesterday on a call, like, not the pressure's on, not to add it, but the development folks, the folks that are going to be making these calls on the major gift side and the annual fund side, are 100% the pathway to a better spot for for each and every department. Less reliance on ticket revenues, to the new who knows what the new normal is going to be. Are we going to be able to next season have full stadiums? Who the hell knows? So we got to build relationships through philanthropy. We have to hit that hard to mitigate other revenue stream decreases. And, there's a great opportunity here for staff members, for the folks that are involved in development, and that folks that are asking people for money or driving revenue to shine and really lead from the front. Lead the department that you're associated with from the front to make a difference here, because it's not going to be normal for a while. The new normal, and I think Sarah mentioned it, of thinking about things differently, or dialing things back, or being creative, or more efficient. Like those are all things that are automatically going to happen. But how much your specific department is going to have to do in that regards, and also in relationship to their peers, is on the backs of the folks that are on this call right now. And there's not a better moment in time for people to step up to the plate and show what they can do and grow their careers through this unfortunate set of circumstances.
Love it.
Love it. It's kind of hard to follow all that, Bill, in particular, for what Jason just said. Not much to add, but what I will say is I've been thinking about this as an optimist, and I'm thinking about fast forwarding towards next fall, and the thought that we will not be back to normal. I would agree with the entire panel on that. But what I'm hoping, and what I hope happens is we continue to engage our people. The fall will look a lot different in the sense that people will be starving to be out, and hopefully we have everything we need medically. And I think through that process, people getting really excited to be out, there's going to be a heightened awareness of engagement that's going to lead to a lot more excitement of people wanting to be involved in our department, whether that's time, talent, treasure, all three. And that will lead to a lot of success from a fundraising perspective, because again, people haven't really had the chance to see what a normal fall would look like. So I hope we can get there. And again, it may not be that we get to fill stadiums, but I think throughout the pandemic, what we're seeing is people have been, I'll just say, bundled up, or they've been in the house. They've been quarantined. So I'm hoping a year from now that we can correct a lot of what that looks like, and take advantage of the fact that we're going to have people who want to be entertained and want to be entertained through sports. So that's where I see us headed in 12 months.
Well, safe to say HR departments are going to be busy updating job descriptions for many months to come, considering what we're up against. So Haven, Sarah, Ben, Jason, you've been great by donating your time today. Really appreciate the dialogue, and hopefully we can continue the conversation offline because lots to cover here and a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.